Even if you look at Kansuke's text, the same text we're looking at, he literally uses Chinese illustrations for all of the polearms except for the naginata.
Oh, yeah.
So it's like, hang on, what's going on there? And when you look at his fist and unarmed stuff, those are all guards that are also mentioned in Essentials of the Fist by Qi Guang.
Oh, okay. Oh, interesting. Yeah.
So it's like
there's some cross-pollination, all kinds of directions. Oh, yes, I recognize those. Yes.
Now that's in Kansuke's text.
Oh, okay, yeah. So that's the 全经节要片, the Essentials of the Fist in Qi Guang's text.
Those are the only two he's got.
That's it. That's the only unarmed fist ones he has.
In this one specifically, yes. He has other grappling ones, but they're obviously Japanese illustrations. But when we're looking at all of his polearms, except for Naginata, here is one for the staff.
Oh yeah, that's actually in Chung Sung Yu's manual, I think. Yeah, a couple of those look like it. But...
So there's that, more with the staff.
The interesting thing is some of those names seem different. But...
Yeah, and then you get spear stuff.
Okay, yeah, that is Qi Guang's spear.
Yeah, that's the stuff that's gone into the Korean spear from Qi Guang as well.
Oh, there you go.
See, this is why it pays to have these conversations.
It's almost like when you can like have wood blocks and then you can just print 1 million little leaflets of things really cheaply. It's almost like they actually get around.
But yeah, like more and more images like this and so on and so on. There's even one with a trident as well. Sorry.
Yeah.
Aha.
On the I see. Yep. So yeah, there is I know that there are all types of yari in Japan. Some of them are trident like, right?
Yes. So the one that most people think of picture is what is called the Jimonji yari. So the one where you have the point and you usually have some kind of cross guardy looking thing that'll come out, or other points that come around almost like a trident shape.
Okay. Yeah. In China there's like a few different kinds of tridents. Like I can think of like maybe 3 or 4 different weapons that are trident shaped. But
yeah, but you see what I mean? Like those are Chinese illustrations. Those are not Japanese at all. And the thing is that I checked the Essentials of the Fist illustrations in this text from Kansuke, ones from Qi Guang and there. The only difference is I think the individuals in the Kansuke text have a mustache.
Oh, well, there you go.
And maybe the way their head is drawn is slightly different. But other than that, everything else is exactly the same. Now, what that means is, if I remember correct, when is the Essentials of the Fist text? Is it like 1560 or something?
Well, it depends. There's 3 versions. So Qi Guang initially published a 14 chapter version in 1560. Then in 66 he published the 18 chapter version, which is the one that's most commonly circulated. And then later he published in 80, I think it was 1582. He published another version, but this time he removed the fist chapter completely because he said it was useless. So
interesting. Okay.
He's like, just use bows and guns and spears. Don't care about anything else.
And what weapon? Well, you probably, figured it out by now. Stick!
So he self-debunked himself.
Fair enough.
I mean, so that's interesting because Kansuke, he dies in 1561. Or 1562? No, I'm pretty sure it's 1561. So I don't think he would have seen
Yeah, the question then is, Yeah, I mean, as because his text, Kansuke's text, was originally handwritten, right?
Yes.
Supposedly,
To my
right?
knowledge, yes.
I'm assuming it was, but over time, people may have appended things, or some of the things like Qiji Guang's fists things could have been in circulation previously.
Well, that's
Right?
the thing.
So there's
Obviously,
all these
someone taught Qiji
possibilities.
Guang, right? I mean,
Yeah.
he didn't just appear in a vacuum and suddenly be like, poof, hey guys, I know this thing. Obviously,
Yeah.
he was taught from a source
Yeah.
or something.
Yeah.
And I don't know. So the either
Well,
we have to. Oh, sorry. Yeah. Keep going.
Well, some of the trident stuff that he incorporates is actually taken from a previous text by Yu Dayo, a different Ming general. It's known as the Jianjing. It's called Essential, the sword classic, even though it has nothing to do with swords.
Right.
He uses some quarterstaffs, but in this text, the Yu Dayo is very focused on the trident. A lot of his work is about the trident, so that could be one potential source of the trident and quarterstaff images.
Yeah. Okay. Because I mean, when we're looking at the fist document and Kansuke's document, we're left with two options. Either one, in just the space of a year, no, less than a year, Kansuke managed to get a copy, or at least managed to see these, or at least the person who drew his illustrations was able to see this same document from Qiji Guang, which I don't think is very likely considering how close it is to when he died. Or two, it's from another source that both Qiji Guang and Kansuke had access to, or a similar one. The question is, what is it? How to get there? Yeah, no one knows. So actually, in the Korean text, Nathan, doesn't it mention unarmed stuff? I seem to remember like stumbling across it at one point.
Yeah. There are a few unarmed forms in the Korean text. I have to admit, I haven't done much of them. They do come from China, strictly come from China. Yeah.
Well, according to Kansuke, all of his unarmed stuff that involves striking also comes from China. So there you go.
Yeah.
Must be something there.
Great Ming got a monopoly on striking.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's interesting because all the grappling is Japanese, but not the strikes.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. Qiji Guang, in his manual, or treatise, he has the 32 like unarmed postures or whatever, and there are some grappling ones, some striking. It's like a very big mix of things, but that in China that's become super influential, where like a lot of styles claim lineage back to that, even though spoiler,
It
it's
always
not
comes
really
back
true.
to lineage. Yeah,
But,
as long as you have a lineage, what you're doing must be true. Yeah, of course.
So it was a really big deal within Chinese martial arts for sure that appeared.
Here we go. So this is the one I told you about where I think the artist was probably not a swordsman. Because if you zoom in on the bottom right, the way he's holding the sword there, I don't know, seems a little bit strange.
No, Nathaniel, it's a secret stance.
No, it's a kuden. Shut up. Don't question the scroll, brother. Just do what it
It's
says.
in the text. It must be true.
Oh my gosh. This one I found kind of interesting because when I was looking into, because when you look at a lot of different Chinese sources, something that had sort of been a bit of a mystery to me is when I was looking at Chinese stuff, and even Korean to a certain extent, at least from the way it looked to me in the drawing, it looked in various images where they had 1 foot raised. Now, in Japanese stuff, while you might see something with someone's, like maybe they're on the balls of their feet or something, there's not really anything where they actually have 1 foot raised specifically. It's really hard to find. But then looking back again through this text that I've had for a while, it's always these texts you've had for a while. You just don't notice things until you look through it like for the 6th time. We get this thing called floating foot, as opposed to planted foot. And you get images like the guy on the top left, for example, where you have 1 foot, the front foot that's slightly raised. then when you compare that to this, for example,
Yeah, the white Kensh, the outer watch stance. Yeah.
then I kind of went, oh, that's kind of interesting.
Yeah. Now this particular posture, this one's interesting because the thing about Chung Zong-yo is that he gives you the posture, and some of the postures he says he'll start like connecting it to like all these other things. It'll be like, when you're in this posture, if they do this, do this one. If they do that, do this one. If they do that, do this one. He'll give you all these like what's it called, like a flow chart almost for what you do from this posture. Whereas other ones he'll just say, okay, do this and this. And this one, he doesn't really give you options. He just says, when you're here, you're going to do this giant long sequence that goes into like a spin move. But yeah, what you're talking about with the floating foot, it's definitely a thing in his manual here. Except I'm trying to think, with this one, he doesn't explain why your foot should be floating exactly.
Yeah, because I literally remember at some ungodly time of the night when I was still going through and writing these little notes you see on the page of, this is also found in this place. And I was literally stepping through this of what he was saying. I was literally stepping through it, reading it line by line and following it. And then I got up to the leap up like a fountain of water. Everything else step by step, it's all good. Okay, step forward with your left, step forward with your right. Okay, cool, sweet. And then leap up. Why?
I wonder if that's linked to a Chinese classical text, because a lot of the Chinese manuals, and they write with these 4-word sayings, and then they're linked to a Chinese classical text, and it's sort of the idea of, if you've read the text, you know what I mean.
Give me 1 second, I'll pull it up. I don't actually see anything talking about water. What it is that's the spin. So the character, it says, what it says, right? It says you move your sword to the right to block their spear, and then you step forward with your left foot as you do that. So you have your sword to the left side, you move it to the right, and block, like wipe the spear. Step forward with your left foot. Then you do the stealing step with your right foot. And this is something that I actually had a question for you guys. But the stealing step, tobu, in the Chinese martial arts, it's basically in all kinds of systems, and I've seen it in multiple manuals, like multiple of these types of manuals, and that basically it's a crossing your feet. So you're taking, in this context, you take a step with your left foot, and then you put your right foot behind your left foot, and you cross your legs, and then you spin on that. You spin out of that. Is the kun.
Is your question is in like, have we come across that in our fields? Is that what you mean? Or
like they have? Do they have? I know, like, I do judo, and in judo you do cross your feet a lot, but that's because it's grappling. You're like taking angles and stuff. But in swordsmanship, I'm not as familiar with Japanese or Korean swordsmanship, and I don't know how much you guys cross your legs.
Did you want to answer that first, Nathan?
Yeah, sorry, you go, Nathaniel.
No, that's all right. I was going to get you go because you're kind of like, I don't know, in this interaction between China and Japan in terms of martial arts, Korea is kind of like the awkward third wheel. So I'll get you to go first, so you have a chance to talk.
So Jerokum has two postures, but they're the left and the right version of the offensive stance, which is a spinning posture similar to this, in the sense of the spin itself. And yes, you do cross your legs in that regard. That's the only posture where you have it, and even in the other spinning form, then you don't really do this. So there's that one, and I mean there's a lot of crossover between some of the forms of Cheng Zong-yo and Jerokum, but Jerokum is supposedly from Li Rusong's swordsmanship, and he doesn't really say any further on the lineage based on that, but I'd assume he took a few things from Cheng Zong-yo as well.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if he was, if he's an educated person, right, he would have been well aware of the other military writings that were going on, because, like Qi Guang's writing became super famous, and a lot of people had read that.
That's kind of interesting, actually, because in Japanese, and to be honest, because when you look at Japanese martial arts as it's practiced today, you do see situations where people will cross their legs. Even if you're looking at Koryu, for example, there are guards with the spear, for example, where people will cross their legs. And I might maybe go over them a little bit later. But whenever I look at old texts, there's very little that talks about footwork, at least in detail. And even then, they're very brief when they discuss it. They don't go into a huge amount of detail. And even all we know is just some of the names that they used for certain kinds of footwork and roughly what some of that might mean. So, for example, floating foot is this idea where you're moving around on the balls of your feet, as opposed to planted foot, similar to what we see with Kansuke's text. But then Musashi, he actually criticizes the footwork, but it's weird. The way he does it is he's like, that's wrong because sometimes you won't be able to do that, which in my opinion is weird because that's basically because like just because you sometimes can't do it doesn't mean it's bad. It's just the wrong context to use it, right?
You could say that about any form.
Yeah, like exactly.
Anything you could say. Well, sometimes you can't do that, therefore it's bad.
Yeah, exactly.
You should do no swordsmanship at all in your entire life.
Well, no, exactly. Though.
I would never say it to his face, but Musashi's wind scroll is basically just taking a dump on everybody else. Like, that's kind of the point of it. Like,
I mean, there's a bit of harmless self-promotion there, to be honest, really.
Yeah,
I mean, like, he's trying to promote what he does in a way. A lot of these sword masters kind of were, because obviously it's profitable for them, and trying to promote your style. What's one way to do it? Well, take a dump on everyone else, I suppose. But yeah, he's like, some schools use floating foot, and that's wrong because you won't always be able to use floating foot. Like, that's basically the way he describes it in his text, which I found kind of funny. But yeah, it's there, but in terms of crossing legs, I just haven't come across it that much in historical texts. I don't know why.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's still pretty niche. In this case, Chung does it because he's going into a spin, but there is another instance in this manual where he does it, but it's actually to basically you're just rotating on your front foot to get your left side out of the way, and then you actually just step back forward with your right foot again. So he's not really spinning; he's rotating his body and then going forward.
But I really wonder with this form, right? Even with the spin, there's still no solid explanation of why he has to have why he's on the toes of his front foot like that in the drawing, because the spinning form, even with the cross leg and Jerokum, there's no mention about being on the toes of your foot. It's like because I don't see why you can't do this without a planted foot.
That's a great question, and I'm not sure either. Right, I think what he wants you to do is he wants you to narrow your profile, to turn your body toward the right to narrow your profile so that you can focus where they're going to thrust. And I think you're just having the foot floating so you don't get stuck there. But I that's just total supposition. I don't know.
Or it could literally just be the fact that he thinks he looks fabulous in that position.
Yeah. That's another thing. Right?
Maybe that's the reason.
I think there's also, with Chinese texts especially, then a lot of the manuals, especially the ones that have come to Korea, then there's parts of it that I think are just to look good, because a lot of them were performed at banquets and things like that. And then if you look good, it gets passed on.
Well,
exactly. I mean, that's just the thing that people don't realize about martial arts is that people think like the best surviving techniques in combat rise to the top, and those become the one that exists later on. But in reality, martial arts survive just like evolution. It's not about what doesn't die. It's about what is able to replicate itself the most. And fancy forms are quite good at replicating themselves.
Yeah.
So.
And whoever speaks the loudest.
Yeah, exactly. One other idea I just had about that floating foot was the outer watch posture, it can be something where you're kind of like stepping slightly out of range and you have your weight shifting onto your back foot and you're kind of baiting them in as you do that. So before you completely land that right foot, as you just step off of it and you shift your weight back, you can keep your left foot floating or your right foot floating in order to then go forward again. In Chinese martial arts and forms, you do that a lot, like a lot. You're always ending in this, like you're gonna be making an attack, and then when you're coming back, you're landing on your back leg and you're keeping your front leg slightly floating.
Yeah, it's interesting that you're mentioning the don't put a lot of your weight on the front foot so you're able to step back quickly, or you're not stuck in that position. Because when we're looking at this, this is again Kansuke. If we're looking at the last two lines, he's actually talking about the idea of being able to step back quickly and strike. And I don't know, maybe it's just perspective, but that front foot is slightly higher than the other one. So, and the guard's very similar. So I don't know. I think that's why I mentioned it in my notes.
Yeah. Could you zoom in on it a little bit?
Yeah. Hang on.
Well, I think it's especially likely given that he talks about a sweep slash first from the left, drawing back the foot. It's if you would talk about a hemo equivalent, the Gaislin, striking at the front foot. I don't know how effective taking back the foot is, but I think every martial artist has dreamed of it, so I see it as very likely.
Well, it's a thing, and the thing about, you mentioned the Gaislin, the thing about that is that it's all of a sudden a giant change in reach, right? If you're talking about single-handed swords, it happens all the time because the reach is not changing, and in fact, they're shortening their reach whenever they reach for your leg because you have longer reach because your sword is at your shoulder height and their sword is below it. So it works really well with that. However, this if they're floating that right foot, they don't necessarily have to keep it they don't necessarily have to keep that foot in front. When he says step back, could he be meaning that you throw your right leg all the way back behind you as you do the cut?
He could, but I mean, I think the thing that I've seen with the Gaislin is that the timing to take that foot back, if you're trying to take that foot back to strike straight away, it's a very narrow window. And yes, I've seen it done sometimes, but to advocate for that to be the technique, I would be hesitant to teach that to the people who come to my club. Whereas I'd rather advocate that you move back, don't try and strike in that one motion, wait till the swords pass and that they're trying to recover from this ginormous one-handed strike and then step in and get their head. As opposed to trying to get this really narrow window, take your leg back to strike at the same, it's just,
I mean, keep in mind when it says sweep slash from the left, and I think this is probably one difference between this and Chen Zhongyo's text, because obviously Chen is talking about pole arms quite often going for the legs. Which makes sense. In Kansuke's text here, he's only talking about sweep slash from the left. He's not really it doesn't specify whether it's going for the leg or whatever. And usually if it's going for your leg, it'll predominantly actually talk about sweep slash you low. Whereas here he doesn't say